Hello, geometry. I want to go through our last review lesson of the year. And this is the last review lesson we'll have before the final. And I want to start out with our warm-up activity. Our warm-up activity is probably the second most missed problem on Monday's test. Will you expect to see a problem like this on the final? And expect it. Yes, definitely expect to see it. So I don't know what it was that a lot of people missed on this problem because it's hard to see your work. It's hard to understand your thinking on a test like that is on Edge Elastic, right? I don't get to see your work. Maybe we rushed it. Maybe we overthought it. Well, let's go through this. Determine whether triangle STU is similar to triangle SDC. Well, by definition, similar triangles are going to have proportional sides and they're going to have at least two congruent angles. There's nothing on here about proportional sides. So we're going to have to skip that. We're going to have to skip side, side, side. We're going to have to skip side, angle, side, because those were two of the postulates we do know. The third one would be angle, angle. Do we have two corresponding congruent angles? That's hard to tell. So what I highly recommend you do is go ahead and do a little bit of math. We know that the sum of all triangles is going to be 180 degrees. So we put in our trusty calculator, 180 minus 66 minus 40. And I could tell right off the bat, you know what? What other angle here is going to be 74. We're just going to go ahead and fill it in. If that's 74, so this will be 74 as well. Well, here's the thing. Notice this corner here is 63 degrees. Do you see 63 on the other sides? No, you don't. There's no 63 degrees anywhere else. Therefore, these two triangles are not similar. And that's how you're going to know. Be able to explain that reasoning. All right, let's move forward because we're going to get into our learning targets. Here are our learning targets that we're going to work on today. We're going to work on properties of parallelograms, and we're going to prove properties of congruent right triangles. If you remember, that's from our second test of the year. And these are two properties that are going to be on the final. Expect it. If you found it on the test, you will find it on the final. And most people got this right on the test. However, the people who did miss it missed very key components on problems like this. So the problem like this, state what additional information is required in order to know that the triangles are congruent using HL. HL is hypotenuse leg. All right. In order for these to be HL, first of all, the triangles have to be right. So that's one piece of information you absolutely need to know, that the triangles are right. Now, if they are right, then you need to know that the hypotenuse, which is the side opposite of the 90-degree angles, are congruent. So if this BC is congruent to EF, all right, that is a piece of information you absolutely have to know. And so I'm going to write it down right here. I need to know that BC is congruent to EF. List those parts. If you cannot list those parts at this point of the year, go back and review. You really need to know how to do this. All right. Last part I need is I got my hypotenuse. I need to find a leg. Now, a leg could be any one of these, but be consistent about your legs. Right? If you're going to go for the short leg, then make sure both of them are short legs. If you're going to go for the long leg, make sure that both of them are the long leg. Doesn't matter. It's just one or the other. Let's go ahead and pick this leg here. So I need to know that these two legs are congruent. And so I need to know that BA, and you can write it any way you want, is congruent to ED. That's all you need to do. If you can name your parts, you got more than half the battle beat. If you understand the postulates, the hypotenuse leg postulates, and those definitions of right triangle congruency, then you've got most of that battle beat. All you have to do is recognize the parts, recognize how to write them out. Very important for you to know. If you're having troubles with this, please go back and review. All right. So make sure you know leg, leg. Can you find those parts? Can you write them out? Make sure you know hypotenuse angle. Know those parts, be able to write them out. And then lastly, make sure you know leg angle, as well as, oh, that was it. So make sure you can write those parts out. All right, the next thing you need to do is know properties of quadrilaterals. If you forget about those, go back into Canvas, find that properties of quadrilateral sheet. Recommend, if you haven't done it already, write it down on a piece of paper. It's going to commit it to memory much easier than spending the entire test period scanning that sheet to figure out what are these definitions and what are these parts that are important for the question that you're being asked, right? You're going to have that part of the process taken care of. You're going to have it down, and then you can just focus on solving the problem. But also expect proofs. And here's a prime example of a proof that we're going to work on today in class. Use the parallelogram PARG to prove that opposite sides of parallelograms are congruent. So step one always is make a plan. And how do those plans and what do they look like? And everybody has a different way about doing it. If you're not marking up these diagrams, you're in a lot of trouble. So what are some properties of parallelograms that we know? Well, we do know that, you know what? By definition, parallelograms, opposite sides are parallel. Can you use that? Yeah, you can use that. Also, by definition, parallelograms, opposite sides are congruent. That's useful. Okay. By definition, parallelograms, diagonals bisect each other. Not necessarily always equally, but they do bisect each other. Is this information that you're going to use all? No, but just simply marking this up is going to help you out. If you have parallel properties, can you think about things like alternate interior angles? Let me use another color so I'm not so confusing. Those could be very useful. Oops. So try to mark everything that you can think of to help you out. So that is going to be your plan. Maybe list a few parts that will help you out. But remember, what are you proving? You're going to prove that PG is congruent to AR. So PG is this side here, and this side, well, that's a definition of the parallelograms, but I can't use that in my proof. How can I go about doing that? Well, I'm looking at this, and I notice that this diagonal, if I look at this diagonal, we have a triangle going on here. So what I'm going to do is going to go ahead and prove two triangles are congruent. And if I can prove that two triangles are congruent without using the parts that I'm trying to prove, then I can use CP/CTC to solve this problem, to actually prove that these sides are congruent. So step two is list your parts. Make sure you're doing all this work here on the side, but list all the parts that you have. Right? If you're going to go ahead and prove that, hey, you know what? Let me get into the next screen here. That triangle PGA is congruent to triangle RAG. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, if you notice earlier, I pointed out alternate interior angles. Use these to your advantage. The fact that we do have a parallelogram, there are properties of parallel lines that you can use. Use this to your advantage, please. All right. And so I think in order for me to do that, I'm going to use side angle. I'm going to use angle side angle. All right. So I'm going to list all those parts. Good strategy while you're doing it. If you're going to use angle side angle, then make sure that you have all the parts for angle, side, angle. And this is a good strategy to use, right? Angle, side, angle. Make sure that you write down the angle. Make sure you write down the side you're going to use. Make sure you write down the other angle. Once you've shown your angle, your side, your angle, then you can go ahead and say, hey, you know what? These two triangles are congruent. And then you can say, once your triangles are congruent, then you can start talking about these pieces. But list your parts. That's step 2. Step 3 is list your reasons. Right? So here are all the parts that we're going to list. I can't talk about alternate interior angles unless I talk about parallelogram lines. So make sure you list that part if you're going to use parallel lines or alternate interior angles in your proof. Make sure that's listed, right? Why can you say this first statement, parallelogram PARG with diagonals PR and AG intersecting at point M? Why can you say that? Well, they told us right here at the very top. That's a given, right? Why are you saying this piece? What's going on with this piece? Make sure you can list all those parts. And why are you listing those parts? Give me those reasons. And if you noticed, here is our finished product. Make sure you review this Nearpod. Try to work through this Nearpod. Your finished product is here on the end. Last part I want you to work on is properties of parallelograms. Know those definitions. Here's a matching activity. It'll actually help you out, give you the answers you need to know, or tell you when you're wrong. So make sure you go through that. Well, that's all I have. Just remember, the final is tomorrow, Friday, April 2nd. It will end at 3 p.m. This test is completely optional. If you're satisfied with your grade, you don't have to take this test. All right. And what would it be on? It's going to be on everything that we worked on this quarter. How would you prepare? Well, review old test, checking for understanding quizzes, class notes. This Nearpod will be a good review activity because it's going to have Tuesday's review as well as today's review. So make sure you go and do that. All right. And keep in mind, there's no retakes on this. So if you don't like the score you got on your final, it is what it is. It's your last opportunity to show mastery of the standards. It's your last opportunity to bump your grade up to a passing score. After Friday, that's it. That's it. We're done. All right. If you have any questions, please email me or drop by during office hours today. I'll be happy to see you. All right, guys. Talk to you later.